go through any rigors of music or Sanskrit or anything as far as we know. But somewhere along the line, he got the inspiration. He attributes everything humbly to the blessings of Lord Guruvayurappan. I am not a person to talk about all those divine things. Hardly human things are very little that I know about, but we are extremely happy. The Board of Trustees are here extremely pleased to confer the award on Mr. Narayan Kutty Menon. Before we start the function, I am going to request Ms. Lekha Menon to say a few words about Mr. Narayan Kutty Menon. She is a close relative. She is very well knowledgeable about music and Sanskrit and literature. So it's indeed a pleasure that she has taken the trouble to come all the way from Kansas, I believe. And that shows her affection and the respect that she has for Mr. Menon and her goodness to accept our invitation. We'll have Ms. Lekha Menon at this point.
My namaste to all of you, and thanks Dr. Aruna for the kind words of introduction. I consider this opportunity to talk about Sundar Narayana and his compositions, the man and his work, as a great honor. And I would like to thank Dr. Aruna and all the members of CMANA for giving me this opportunity. I am sure many of you know, or at least know of, Sundar Narayana. Allow me to refresh the memory of those who know about him, and for those who have not heard of him or not familiar with him, let me just fill in the details of his life very briefly and in little detail about his compositions. I'll start with a very brief life sketch. Mr. Menon, an engineer, came to the USA in 1968, and after an MS degree in mechanical engineering from City University of New York, he worked for the next 30 years in the fields of alternate energy and connected areas. He subsequently launched and managed a very successful company of his own. The dawn of the new century saw him at the peak of his career. His wife, Dr. Sridevi, a busy practicing physician, and their children, Jay Kumar and Lakshmi, well settled and flourishing. Through hard work and commitment, Mr. Menon had achieved all that he had set out to do and was quite content and ready to settle down to a life of retirement when Guruvayurappan decided to make his presence felt. Mr. Menon had recurring dreams of Guruvayurappan telling him, instructing him to write songs in Guruvayurappan's praise in a way ordinary people would understand, in a language that normal people would understand. He obeyed his command and he started writing, and the first composition was in Riti Gaula, starting with Hari Om Narayana. That was just the beginning. From then on, he had gone on to write more than 200 compositions of various forms. We will take them up one by one as we go along. From now on, I'll try and refer to him as Sundara Narayana, because I think from now on I'll think of him as a composer. Sundara Narayana lays all his musical contributions at the feet of Lord Guruvayurappan and attributes all his creativity to his divine intervention. Having said that, God never makes the path of a true bhakta easy. As the saying in Malayalam goes, Tan Pati Devam Pati, that we do our half and God does the rest. It is about the half that this composer did and its result in the form of this composition that I want to draw your attention to today. Yes, Guruvayurappan did do his half, but only a person with great unwavering devotion or bhakti, emotional intelligence, courage grit, dedication, commitment and sheer hard work could have carried out his harp as good as Sundar Narayana did. There are several contributing factors that made the transition of Narayan Kutty Menon to Sundar Narayana. His parentage and upbringing in a family with traditional values and beliefs can be considered as the most important factor which helped this transition. The strong belief in bhakti which was ingrained in him from childhood and through the formative years must have been the prime reason why Guru Ayappan chose Narayan Kutty Menon to be his scribe. I believe that. As mentioned earlier, Mr. Menon was an engineer by education and profession. As one, can I say, academically trained in theory and practice and teaching of music, I have always believed and maintained and told my students that to become a good musician, you primarily need two things. That is a good ear and listening capacity, or, you know, what you have to listen to me. It's all through the ear. Yes, a good voice is very important. But to me, a good ear and a good pace in maths is very, very important. Our composer had both. What we normally hear ascribed to as jnanam is what I would say this good listening power and mathematical pace. Sundar Narayana's listening prowess helped him recognize the subtleties, nuances and the differences of the multitude of ragas in Carnatic music and also the talas. And his mathematical acumen helped him decipher the complicated permutations and combinations of swaras and rhythmic patterns in the delineation of ragas and talas, and especially in the Manodharma Sangita, or in the, when you think of a raga, there are a lot of permutation combinations. Basically, it is maths. Anybody who sings, who performs, who's done Kalpana Swaras will know. It is basically maths which comes into play with all those swaras we have and the talas we have at our hand. The other contributing factor was the gift of an unsuspecting high school teacher, Mr. Subramanya Iyer, way back in the 50s, who gave him a good grounding and love for the language of Sanskrit. So, these I think are the factors that made the transition from, that's why Guru Ayappan chose him. He had all these attributes in him. So, with Guru Ayappan's blessings and these attributes, I think the movement from, or the transition from Narayan Kutty Menon to Sundar Narayana was complete. I can well imagine the composer's bewilderment when he got Guru Ayappan's command to write in his praise, because when he started out, he wasn't familiar with the technicalities of either music, poetry or the language Manipravalam or any of those things. I remember him quizzing me about the 72 Medakirta system, the Kadavayadi formula, the different types of ragas, the janyas, the janakas. Once he made me sit down and explain the 35 thala system to him. It's not, this is what we normally practice in Carnatic music, we have the 35 thala system. He didn't know what exactly it was. He had heard of the Adi and the Rupakam, he didn't know what the 35 thala system was. He made it his business to find out. He made me explain. He worked on gathering so much information that in no time he could compose in the rarest of rare ragas and went on to create 200 odd kritis. The book Guru Ayappan Gananjali, I have it here. It's a collection of 200 compositions which is released on July 16, 2011 at a grand function at Bridgewater Temple, New Jersey. I think this is the sum total of one man's passion and passionate quest for knowledge in the path of devotion. This has got all the compositions and it's also got a CD with all the songs recorded in it. Sundar Narayana compositions bear the marks of a very mature and versatile composer. Let's examine the factors that prove this point. Let's take one by one. We'll first take the ragas. He has composed in more than 95 different ragas. 95 is a huge number. You have to know those ragas really, really well. You have got to internalize and only then can you compose in those. He has used more than 95 different ragas. He had great sensitivity and understanding of the ragas that he used. He knew why he was using which raga and where. He had clarity even as he penned the words as to which raga the words should be encased in. Whether it's a Melakarta raga or a Janya, a Bhashanga, Upanka, Sampurna or Varjya, maybe it's a popular one or maybe it's a rare raga. This composer has used these ragas with aptness to explicitly express the emotional and devotional content of his kritis. He has a deep sense of music and knew instinctively how exactly each word or phrase should be sung so as to bring out the precise emotional flavor he had envisaged while creating these words. Whether it's a popular Kalyani Todi Shankarabaranam or the rare Veeravasantam Soni or Devakriya, he could conceptualize down to the exact degree the shade of the bhava or emotional impact he wanted his words to create in the listener. Let's take the talas. Talas were chosen depending on the desired flow of words required to bring out the meaning. Other than Adi and Rupakam, we find generous use of Ekatala, Chapatala, both Tisra and Khandajati. But what threw me and amazed me was a piece composed in Simhanandana Tala, that rarest of rare talas. I, for one, have not connected much with this theoretical postulate outside of my theory books. Simhanandana Tala is the 32nd in the list of now extinct 108 Tala system. We use the 35 as I mentioned earlier. This is a 108 Tala system. It's not used now. Our popular Adi Tala has got 8 Akshara Talas as we know and the 3 Angas, the Lagu and the Panutrutta. Simhanandana Tala has 128 beats. 128 beats to 1 avartara and 18 Angas. Angas means the weight is the mode of reckoning. We only know the beat and the finger counts. We know the Dhrutam and Anudrutam. But we don't know the Kakapadam and other things where there are Angas which says, okay, beat, wave, beat, take your hand up, do a round. This is all what they used to do. And 108 Talas had all this. But of course, when the Tilana made in Simhanandana Tala was performed, they did use Adi Tala, that is, I think it comes 18 times or something, 16 times or 18 times. Anyway, I always wonder how Sundara Narayana, living here in the US, far away from the music sabhas and theoretical discussions and technical discussions, decided to create in this Tala the longest and the most complicated known to man. I asked him this question and his response was typical. He smiled and said, I don't know. What he means is, Guru Arpan did it. He said, I don't know, but he did do it. Whether it is Guru Arpan's grace or the result of the divine quest of an intelligent and creative mind, I don't know. All I can say is really amazing. Now let's come to the different types of compositions. Besides the Kriti or Kirtana forms, there are Varnams, Padams, Ragamalikas and Tilanas. Special mention must be made of his 200th creation, which is a set of Kaikuttikali Trivadra Pata songs. It is a classic composition with all the typical components of Ganapati and Saraswati Stuti, Tiruvadra, Kummi, Kuratti, Vanji and Mangalam, all set in the appropriate meters with the pace and tempo typical of such musical forms. There are 4 sets of Tiruvadra Kali songs with the themes of Krishna Leela, Kaliya Mardhanam, Rasa Krida, Kamsa Kingara Samhara. So the 4 full sets with all these components. There are bhajans in Hindi which have the likeness, lilt and flow of words that is very pleasing. There is one on Swami Chinmayananda which is really, really special. The dance drama Manjula Charitam was complete in itself down to the Tilana and Simhanandana Tala. Of course, when the Tilana was performed, they used the Adi Tala rather than the Simhanandana Tala. The base was Simhanandana Tala, they used the Adi Tala system or the reckoning to perform. Let's come to the language or components of Sahitya used. Most of the compositions are in Sanskrit, Malayalam and Manipravalam and some of them in Hindi as I mentioned. The composer had very clear and concrete ideas of the emotional impact he wanted his songs to carry. He had great clarity as to the meters to be used and how and where the words should be sung. The stresses, the spaces, the elongations or breaks, so that they will project the exact emotion he had in mind when penning these words. Besides the classical Kriti with the divisions of Pallavi, Anupallavi and Charanam, there are innumerable Kirtanas with multiple Charanas, Samashti Charanas, and Madhyama Kala Sahitya. On examining the Sahitya of Sundara Narayana compositions, one can see many prosodical beauties like Prasa and Swarakshara. There are many instances of Antyaprasa and Tritiyakshara Prasa, for example, the Bhavayami, Pavana, Bhuvana, Srivatsa, Tvitiya Prasa, and the Antyaprasa would be Sukhadatri, Sundaragatri, Dukkantri, ending, the Antyaprasas. There are many such examples right through his 200-odd compositions. The Madhyama Kala Sahitya he has composed impart a vigor and zest to the Kritis, adding to their technical and musical quality. The choice and use of a composer mudra Sundara Narayana establishes this composer as one with all the characteristics of a complete and classic composer. To my knowledge, the credit of having written the most number of kritis in praise of Guruvayurappan goes to Sundara Narayana. I think Guruvayurappan is to Sundara Narayana who Sri Rama was to Tyagaraja. His muse, his inspiration. Who can resist the appeal of direct and simple cries like Nee Enne Marannu Poyu? Or who can sound more intimate, what can sound more intimate than the address Enter Krishna? Who can resist empathizing with this composer when he cries out, Narayana Hare, Entur Adbhudam, Vere Arumille, Kavyam Rachikkuvan, Tira Jnanamilla Rachikkan, Tirukatha Evvitham Ezhudum Madhava, Sundara Bala, Vandu Varane, Ennavil, Kavitha Rachikkuvan. That means, O Narayana, what a wonder, Entur Adbhudam. Isn't there anyone else who can write your story? I have absolutely no jnanam. Jnanam illa, tira jnanam illa, Rachikan. He says, I have no jnanam or knowledge to compose. How will I compose your story? Oh beautiful boy, Sundara Bala, come and reside in my town. Vandu Navil Vasikene, he says. Such beautiful words that go straight to one's heart. I think this kind of sums up my observations on the Sundara Narayana Kritis. I think my observations on the man, his music, on his blessings from Guruvayurappan will not be complete unless I mention something about his family, especially one person, his wife, Dr. Sridevi. Her steadfast faith, devotion, support and constant care has played a most important part in creating and sustaining Sundara Narayana the composer. Agrees? I'm sure he will agree with me. I thank you, ma'am, for being you and for being such a wonderful human being. Thank you. The children, Kumar, Lakshmi and Shiv, have always been there, supportive, affectionate, waiting on him every moment. If this family has supported this muse, his muse, all these years and they continue to do so. I have heard great words of appreciation about our composer from musicians in India and in the US. There are a number of CDs and concerts of Sundara Narayana compositions by eminent artists that bear testimony to the growing popularity of this composer. Several volumes of CDs have been published by Dr. Omna Kutty, Dr. Srivalsan J. Menon, Shenkote Hari Subramanian, K. Muralidharan Unni, and of course, our singer of the day, Mr. Shankar Nambudi himself. I hope he will sing a few of these compositions today. Sir, I request you to please. Innumerable concerts by renowned artists exclusively featuring Sundara Narayana compositions are staged in India and the US. And to crown it all, we have today this function where an august body like Seemana, which consists of a learned and very discerning body of music lovers, is bestowing the title of honorary patron on the scribe of Guruvayurappan. I'm sure I'm voicing our honorary sentiments when I say, what more could one want? Having come here, have proved himself as a great composer, have lived his life here. What more than an honor? This honor actually is a badge of acceptance and appreciation